This is LTMB, Let the Madness Begin. We're in Columbia, South Carolina, and we have a very special guest. We are with 2020 Democratic presidential candidate, Marianne Williamson. Thank you for being here with us, Marianne.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so first question that we want to ask you, you've had a very long career as a best-selling author, an activist, spiritual advisor. You've started nonprofit organizations. Why did you believe now was the right time to run for president?
I think the traditional political establishment seems blind to the trauma that is experienced by the average American. And I've had a 35-year career in moving individuals from trauma to transformation. And all that an individual all that a nation is a group of individuals. So the things that are really necessary to transform a life are necessary to transform a country. We have to have a far more honest conversation about what is happening, get far more real, get down. We have to face as a country what we have to face as individuals when we want to change our lives. Where are you and where are you not who you say you are? Where are you and where are you not behaving ethically? Where are you and where are you not paying your moral debts? And that's the conversation this country has to have in order to change. The political establishment doesn't have that conversation, so I am.
With that being said, that type of approach seems very unique compared to your traditional political representative or presidential candidate. Would it be fair to describe, your approach to attempt to transform this country politically as a psychoanalytic one? Would it be accurate to describe it as a psychoanalytic one?
I would describe it as a whole person, integrative politics, just like we have an integrative medicine. We now treat politics the way we treated decades ago medicine, where you didn't take care of your body, you didn't take care of your health, you didn't take care of your nutrition, you didn't take care of your lifestyle, and then if you got sick, you just thought you could take a medicine, an external remedy to fix it. We now know you have to cultivate health. And so our political system, like the old-fashioned medical model, only treats symptoms.
Correct.
It's not dealing with cause. Now, this is the deal. The people of the United States know better. The culture has moved. It's just that our politics is stuck back in the 1980s and 90s somewhere. So what I'm talking about is not odd to the American people. It's just odd to politicians. But the political mindset that you're talking about, that is the traditional political mindset, has gotten us into a terrible ditch. So the idea that we're to only take seriously people whose mindset is embedded in that perspective, which got us into the ditch, that they're the only people we could possibly consider as serious candidates for getting us out of the ditch, I think is kind of preposterous.
Okay, so that kind of surrounds this like collective healing or collective transformation,
right.
Or like, because your foundation is like self-help, right?
Well, I don't say it as self-help, but divine help.
Okay. I'm curious as to how do you nationalize something like that? Because that's not like policy oriented. Like if you're trying to get policy passed or legislation passed, that's a bit different, because there's enforcement mechanisms.
Yeah.
There's checks and balances, to make sure, that policy is implemented correctly. How do you nationalize something like you're trying to present to the country?
Okay, so I'll give you an example, because the three major pillars of my campaign are examples, and they all have very practical implications for policy. First of all, we have millions of American children who live in chronic trauma. Millions of American children who go to school every single day in schools that don't even have adequate school supplies to teach a child to read. If a child cannot read by the age of 8, the chances of high school graduation are drastically diminished, and the chances of incarceration someday are drastically increased. Millions of these children live in America's domestic war zones, where the violence that they experience in their homes, the streets, families, and schools is so great that psychologists tell us that the PTSD of a returning veteran from Afghanistan or Iraq is no more severe than that which is experienced by these children. This is a humanitarian emergency, one that the traditional political establishment isn't even dealing with because, number one, these kids aren't old enough to vote, so they're not a constituency. They're not old enough to work, therefore they have no financial leverage. And in a system such as ours today, where our government is basically a system of legalized bribery,
Right.
how can these children possibly compete with the cloud of these multinational corporate forces who are flooding Congress and the White House with millions of dollars every day? Policy. I will have a United States cabinet level, United States Department of Children and Youth. These children, we're simply normalizing their despair. They need wraparound services. They need anti-trauma. They need anti-bullying. They need restorative justice. They need conflict resolution. They need mindfulness in the schools. There are so many ways that we have all of the experts, the child educators, the teachers, the social workers, all of the people who know what to do to help with a traumatized child. These people exist here, but they fight for $50,000 in a grant here, $100,000 in a fundraiser there, and they're getting to maybe 10% of these traumatized children. So this is specific policy that begins with recognizing that these children are full-on citizens of the United States, and we should be rescuing them no differently than if they were the victims of a natural disaster. That's number one.
Okay.
Number two, if you want me to continue with how these things are translated into policy.
No, you can continue.
Second one has to do with race in America. I believe it's time for us to take the next step, the next fundamental step in racial reconciliation. We ended slavery. We had civil rights legislation that dismantled segregation. We then had the Voting Rights Act, which guaranteed that there would be equal access to the polls of Black Americans. In many ways, however, we're now sliding backwards. We have, in 2013, the Supreme Court started chipping away at the Voting Rights Act, and that is what led to this spate of voter suppression efforts all over the country, and we know who they're basically aimed at. We have mass incarceration. We have criminal disparity in racial disparity in our criminal justice system. So in addition to the ways that we started sliding backwards, there is one major piece that never yet was addressed. At the end of the Civil War, every slave family of four, former slave family of four, was promised 40 acres and a mule. In most of the cases, that was not given, and even where it was given, in most of those cases, it was taken back. And so the economic disparity between what Blacks were able to do, because as soon as the Black Code laws were passed here in the South after the Civil War, those laws were passed to ensure subpar economic and social and political opportunity. I believe it's time for the United States to pay reparations. So that's policy. When you say, how do you nationalize it? This is a policy. It's called a number and a reparations council, and you take 20 years and you disperse those funds through this council for this express purpose of projects of economic and educational renewal. So once again, you see the issue, you address the issue on a moral level, and then you turn it into policy. Number three has to do with the fact that our national security agenda really has nothing to do with planning for peace 50 years from now. It serves, just like we don't have proper climate change, answering to the climate change crisis because of profits for fossil fuel companies. We don't have universal health care because of profits for health insurance and big pharma. We don't have appropriate gun safety laws because of profits for gun manufacturers. We also do not wage peace the way we should in the world because of profits for defense contractors. So we must wage peace as well as be prepared for war. So I would not only beef up in a very big way the efforts of the State Department, the humanitarian efforts, and the diplomatic efforts that have to do with peace creation. Right now, we spend $1 on actual peace creation methods versus over $1,000 on preparedness for war. To create peace, you expand economic opportunities for women, you expand educational opportunities for children, you reduce violence against women, and you ameliorate unnecessary human despair wherever possible. Because desperate people, large groups of desperate people, are a national security risk. Desperate people, large groups of desperate people, become the petri dish out of which so much pathology occurs. So not only would I totally beef up the State Department, but also on the level of domestic policy, we need a United States Department of Peace. We need to deal with people who are formerly incarcerated, who need to get their lives back. We need to deal with former gang members. We need to deal with domestic violence. We need to do restorative justice, conflict resolution. Americans, this is what's really going on. The political establishment is like, that doesn't even like, they're gobsmacked by anything that's real. This is what's real. This is what's going down. This is what's going on that's real and fierce and true in America. And I believe we need an American president who actually realizes what's going on and wants to address it on the level of the actual problem.
Okay, hold on. So you hit on a few topics, and you're talking about tough conversations that we're not having. So I've heard you say that many times. And those tough conversations, they could be about the private prison industry. They could be about mass incarceration, poverty, reparations. In a recent interview, I heard you say, quote, "Our entire defense agenda has to do with preparing for war, but we don't even contextualize wage and peace." So again, these are conversations you seem willing and eager to have, but I know that many people are very uncomfortable with these topics. And just one example of how people are uncomfortable with that is the vile and very negative reaction that people had to Colin Kaepernick and others kneeling. So how do you think voters are going to resonate with you addressing these topics? And is that a concern of yours?
I think far more people in this country love than hate.
Okay.
But haters have become politically organized. They've become, and they've been harnessed for political purposes. I think when we actually have a politics that presents people with the option of doing the right thing. Remember, in the last election, 3 million more people voted for Hillary Clinton. And if actual democracy, if there had not been, I believe that if there had not been a feeling among so many people who should have been voting for more progressive purposes, that the situation was rigged. If they just let democracy happen, it would have been either Hillary or it would have been Bernie. But if it had been Bernie, I believe he would have beaten Trump. And if it had been Hillary, in that case, I think she would have beaten Trump, because not too many people would have stayed home and voted for Joe Stein. So I believe that this perfect storm of the last presidential election, neither that nor the reaction to Colin Kaepernick, should be used as an indicator of what is possible. I believe, however, if we present people a kind of sort of option, if we present people what so much of the traditional politics is, which is a better version of same old, then I do not believe that we will defeat Donald Trump. I think we need to get real, and that is what people, I think, respond to, and that is, I think, the only politics that will defeat Donald Trump.
Just one of those tough conversations that you talk about is the reparations. Mike, you were supposed to bring the lifetime cookout card. Remember that?
We talked
about.
Yeah, we did talk about that on our show, because we have kind of talked about you.
Yeah, and your campaign.
Your campaign. I need to complete this order right quick, and then we're gonna get to the segment.
Oh, you placing the order right now?
Yeah, I'm placing the order for Marianne Williamson.
Oh, okay.
This it's a lifetime cookout card. Wait a second. Submit. I just bought her a lifetime cookout card on me. I'm sorry, I don't have it with me today.
We'll have to get that to you.
I have to get that custom lifetime cookout card to you at some point.
Right. But so several weeks ago.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, our audience will know exactly what we're talking about.
Right. Lifetime pass.
Yeah.
But several weeks ago, you started your campaign. And we saw your interview on CNN with John Berman. And that was the first time of us getting to know you, and we'll know you in the political arena and what your campaign was about. So you did go in length about reparations and how you supported that. It was shocking, stunning. It was refreshing, and not because we have not heard that type of language, that type of support for reparations before, but I don't believe we've heard that from a presidential candidate. And since then, it seems as though other Democratic presidential candidates have had to answer that question, if they support reparations and what that will look like. I guess the question is, why do you, or why is this issue focused for you? Why do you believe that America needs to take this step?
I have a 35-year career in personal transformation. And like I said, all that a nation is a group of individuals. So it is a universal principle of spiritual transformation that you must admit your wrongs. Abraham Lincoln said that a nation must confess its sins. Catholics go to confession. Jews, in Judaism, the most holy day of the year is the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. And in the 12-step recovery program, it says that you must take a fearless moral inventory and admit the exact nature of your wrongs. This is a character defect that has been with this country from the very, very beginning. And we need to put this chapter to bed. We need to make this reconciliation happen for my great-grandchildren and for your great-grandchildren. We are still passing on, bequeathing generation to generation, the karmic toxicity of the fact that this healing is not fully accomplished. Reparations will not fix everything.
Correct.
But it will be, I believe, one piece that carries great spiritual and moral as well as economic and social force, because it is an acknowledgement of a debt owed. And I think that with that acknowledgement and with the actual payment of reparations, there will be a release of tremendous spiritual force.
Okay.
Earlier you spoke about kind of changing the direction of the State Department. Now, altering the direction of any state-sponsored institution seems like a daunting task to me. That is one of the items like on your platform.
Yes.
That surrounds, I guess, changing the focus of the Department of Defense. What does kind of rearranging the moving parts of that institution look like, considering like how many agencies the Department of Defense or any State Department?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
It's such a big apparatus.
Yeah.
How does that look? What does that look like?
Well, first of all, the president has tremendous power in that the president appoints the Secretary of State and the president appoints the Secretary of Defense. However, let me say, I'm not out to alter the job of the State Department. I'm out to increase the funding for the humanitarian and diplomatic efforts of the State Department that wage peace. And also, when you have our current State Department, our first, in this administration, the first Secretary of State was the former CEO of Exxon. Well, that says it all. That's not a humanitarian or a diplomat. That's somebody who's about how to sell, okay? We currently have a situation where, for the sake of $100 billion in arms sales, we are aiding through our aerial support in the genocidal war that the Saudi Arabians are now prosecuting against the people of Yemen, where tens of thousands of people have starved to death, including children. This is horrifying. Now, our current Secretary of State says, well, you can have strategic partnerships with people who don't share your values. No, you can't. This means you have sacrificed your values. So this is about the fact that somebody has a capitalism untethered to ethics, and I'm not against capitalism. I'm for capitalism with a conscience, but a capitalism untethered to moral and ethical consideration has hijacked our value system. It hasn't just hijacked the workings of our government, it has hijacked our value system. No, you don't. If you and I know somebody is going to commit a murder, we know they are, and we sell them that gun because we want the money, we are complicit. So what I see is that others have altered the function of the State Department. I want to put it back. The State Department should be, through humanitarian and diplomatic efforts, helping to wage peace in the world. Now, same with the Defense Department. I don't want to alter the function of the Defense Department. I have great respect for the military, and I think we all should. But I see the military like a surgeon. You have to have surgery. You want to have the best surgeon. We need to have the best surgeon on hand. But I think we all agree that you should avoid surgery if at all possible. We have expenditures on military equipment that the military didn't even ask for. I'll give you an example. The United States Air Force has ordered 100 airplanes called the B-21 Raider. The B-21 Raider, each one costs $550 million, and each one is capable of carrying and dropping not only conventional weapons, but also nuclear weapons. Now you tell me why we need 100 airplanes that carry and drop nukes. Because you drop 5 of those, it's over for human civilization as we know it. You drop 10 of those, it's over for humans on this planet for 300,000 years. This has nothing to do with keeping America safe. This has to do with profitability, short-term profitability for nuclear contractors and defense contractors. So I want America to be as safe as the rest of us do, appropriately and properly. But the American people need to awaken from our magical thinking. The reason we don't have health care is because of short-term profits for healthcare, health insurance, and pharmaceutical companies. The reason we don't fight climate change adequately is because of short-term profits for fossil fuel companies. The reason we don't have common sense gun laws is because of short-term profitability for gun manufacturers. And the reason we are not waging peace is because of short-term profits for defense contractors. And if I'm president, that will stop.
Okay.
Let's switch to criminal justice for a minute. That's a significant part of our show. We talk about criminal justice reform. We talk about police misconduct, police abuse. Recently, the officer who shot 17-year-old Antoine Rose and killed him was declared not guilty at his criminal trial. And that was just one of the latest examples of an officer not being held accountable for their actions. Now we realize, and we say all the time, that we understand that law enforcement is a very tough job, tough responsibility. It's a very tough profession, but it deserves to come with the highest levels of scrutiny and accountability. What do you believe you can do as president to foster an environment where police officers are held accountable for their actions?
Well, first of all, as I was mentioning before about the president appointing the Secretary of State and appointing the Secretary of Defense, the president appoints the Attorney General, who is head of the criminal justice part of our government. We currently have an administration where making laws even tougher and situations tougher for people of color specifically is more of a hallmark of their campaign. I would be appointing an Attorney General who is as astute and as proactive in addressing the issues that you just articulated as possible.
Right.
Something is going on. Some of the things going on, I don't think any of us understand. And one of the things that I would seek to do is to have I would bring certain people, including police chiefs, into the Oval Office. I would close the door. And I would ask some very serious questions. What's going on here? What's going on here? What's going on here that in other countries they can bring somebody down without shooting them to kill? What's going on here? And I do understand that the trauma, the same post-traumatic trauma that is affecting everyone else is also affecting these policemen. I don't enter it from a place. Sure. I would want the police to feel that in me they have someone who hears them in their concerns, and I want every citizen, including every person walking down the street, to feel that way as well. But I think in addition to the external issues that we know need to be addressed, I think we all look at things like all those acquittals and go, what's going on here?
Right.
What is going on here? I would do my very, very best to have that deeper conversation with the people who just might be able to give me some answers and to take the actions that just might provide some solutions.
Do you think there's enough willingness in the country to have such a conversation? Because earlier I asked about how you would nationalize the policy, but how do you nationalize the conversation? Because in this country, and actually not just in this country, but media plays a big part in how I guess people develop their attitudes and their mindset and their worldview in general. Yeah. So how do you get past that firewall of the media? You know what I'm saying? Because when you are talking about, a spiritual transformation and reaching out to people, that's not easy considering like the distractions that everyone tends to be weighed down by, and the media that tends to suppress certain voices. How can you get past that firewall and nationalize the conversation at least?
Well, the establishment media is doing their best to ignore me now, although that is beginning to crack. And my answer is you guys. This is a new day. This is what grassroots is. We don't need the gatekeepers anymore. I can be on your show. I might not have my CNN town hall yet, but I'm on your show. And I'm on other shows. We've got a whole, it's not a counterculture. It's really more the culture now. It is a new establishment. It's not anti-establishment. It is a new establishment. And particularly a certain generation, which is more interested in your show. So my answer is, I'm not trying to dumb down my message or twist my message or figure out what people want to hear. What do I think people would agree to? That's not why I'm doing this. It would be no reason for me to do this if that's where I was coming from. I'm here to state as fiercely and authentically as I can the vision of America that is true for me, what I believe is happening and what I believe we need to do about it. I believe that there's an inherent good in that. Now, people who resonate with that, yourselves included, come be on my program. Now, will this ultimately turn into a political force that is enough to win the White House? I don't know, but then on the other hand, Hillary Clinton supposedly was a shoo-in.
Correct.
And Donald Trump is president. So anybody who thinks that they know what could work, and one of the things I want you guys to know, when I talk about reparations in Iowa, one of the whitest states in America, and I talk about reparations in New Hampshire, one of the whitest states in America, I get applause every time because we are a good and decent people. I don't think the average American is a racist. I think the average American, however, is deeply undereducated about the history of race in America. And when I do my little American history thing and I just take people from the end of the Civil War through the Black Code laws, through what all those pieces of legislation did, what they didn't, what we haven't done yet, I get applause in very white states. So we don't have a political system which has, in a very, very long time, placed in front of the American people, this is what we do. First thing we do is we do the right thing. We take care of these children, we save these children, we pay reparations, and we become peacemakers in the world. How do we know that the American people, in their decency and goodness, wouldn't say, sounds right to me? Because it's like, just like with a human life, if you don't align yourself with goodness and truth, I don't care what you do on the outside, things are going to keep falling apart. I think a lot of people from a religious place, from a spiritual place, from a psychotherapeutic place, from a place of recovery know that. The fact that the political system doesn't acknowledge it and the media elite doesn't acknowledge it doesn't mean they're the majority. They just have hijacked the tools of a particular channel of conversation. And I think a lot of people are turning off to that channel, obviously.
Have you received any direct pushback from prominent figures in the media? I haven't really seen it.
No,
but see, I don't really pay attention to a lot of prominent figures in the media.
That's my point.
Neither do a lot of people. Like the demagogues, as Will likes to call them.
We have one big demagogue.
Yeah.
We should be clear with that.
Have you
save that one for him.
Have you faced any kind of direct pushback, specifically more aggressive pushback, maybe more condescending pushback?
Well, it's very condescending, but it's passive pushback. I haven't had my town hall yet on CNN. I haven't. Or when one, a woman who has a big show that we all watch, she talks about the women who are running, and she doesn't say my name. Well, actually, no, I am running. So to not mention my name really is fake news. So that's what the form it takes right now. It's not aggressive. It's passive, and it's very condescending. But you know what? That's starting to change. It's a process. I'm on a show this weekend and a show next week, and I don't want to be whiny or complaining. I'm just answering your question, and with help from people like yourselves, start to pop.
So obviously we've heard you speak many times, and again, we've reported on your campaign several times as well. Arguably, you have the most progressive platform of any of the other 2020 Democratic presidential candidates. We've looked at your campaign website as well. It's very expansive. We've heard many times that progressive politics cannot win
Yeah.
all across the United States of
That's
America.
the same group of people who said
Right.
that Hillary was a shoo-in.
Exactly.
I just want to this elite establishment, the Godfathers, who are telling us who can win.
Right.
That's why we're here.
Right.
They're why we're here. Just
Right.
want to be sure.
Right. So that's basically the question. We're told that in several pockets in the United States, in the Midwest, progressive issues just won't resonate with voters.
It's true, because voters don't want health care. Voters don't want to be able to send their kids to school. Voters don't want to be able to get out of the burden of this college loans. Voters don't want this $15 an hour minimum wage. Come on, let's be real. Listen, I'm old enough that I remember when Ronald Reagan was considered too conservative to ever be president. This is particularly not a moment when you can predict.
Right.
And people are changing, and so many people who voted for, many people who voted for Obama then voted for Trump because they were economically desperate. And they did not feel that Obama had addressed their concerns as needed, and he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then they thought maybe Trump would. And I think that I think that they're intelligent people who realized they were conned.
Mm. So what's the kind of the next shift if that is the case? If they elected to vote for Trump because of their economic anxiety, because Obama did not address that, and I think I kind of agree with you that it's been a fraud, and I think people are seeing that. What's the next step here? Where do you see people kind of going or turning to?
Well, people are not stupid. So the Democratic Party needs to, and most of the candidates would do this. I know for me, it's about a massive infusion of economic hope and opportunity, an immediate Medicare for all type health plan. $15 an hour minimum wage, although in some places that's too big a leap for the community. I have no problem with the government taking some temporary compensatory measure. Mm-hmm. Immediate renegotiation and or cancellation of these college loans, and immediate making of tuition free for any American who wants that higher education or technical school. You repeal the tax cuts. In 2017, we had a $2 trillion tax cut where 83 cents of every dollar went to the very wealthiest individuals and corporations under the canard that, of course, it's going to all trickle down. Mm-hmm. After 40 years, I think the evidence is in, the jury is in. Yeah. It not only didn't trickle down, it left millions of people without even lifeboats for this. It's going to lift all boats, you-know-what. It has destroyed America's middle class. It has created a situation where only a few people control the majority of American wealth. And 40% of the American people struggle to make ends meet. So you immediately repeal those top tax cuts, which were legislated to be permanent, and you permanentize the middle class tax cuts, which were legislated to be temporary. So you do this massive infusion of economic hope and opportunity, and you will just hear the sigh of relief on the part of so many people who live in chronic anxiety, and people can go about living their lives in a way that produces abundance. People will have time to spend with their lovers, with their spouses, with their children, with their friends, in their communities, making their dreams come true, going after projects, starting businesses, doing what you guys are doing. Everybody's got a dream. You guys had a dream to do something good. So does everybody. But we cap people's dreams. The government should be serving you in self-actualization. It shouldn't be punitive. We need to get this back to a government of the people, by the people, for the people, not just the governments of a few multinational corporate conglomerates, by a few multinational corporate conglomerates, and for a few multinational corporate conglomerates.
All right. So one last question. The debate has been scheduled. The first debate has been scheduled in Miami, end of June, I believe, 26th and 27th, I believe.
I didn't know the exact date, and I didn't know the city, so that's news.
Yes, in Miami. We know that there are requirements, and one of those requirements are 65,000 individual donors. So are you on track, or do you?
I have, at this point, 33,000.
Okay.
So I still need 32,000.
Okay.
And we have 6 weeks left.
Right.
And all I need, if people give even $1 donation, even $1 donation counts as a unique contributor. And so if people will go to Marianne2020.com, if you feel that my voice should be in these debates, I really hope that you will do that and talk to your friends. And, it's not saying I'm going to vote for you. You don't know if you're going to vote for me a year from now if you're in one of those primary states. But it means that you think that my voice and the topics that I bring up should be in the debates, and I hope that everybody listening and you guys will give me at least that $1
Right.
at Marianne 2020
No doubt.
and help me get there. Thank you.
Well, yes, we definitely agree that you should definitely be on that debate stage. I
Thank
think
you.
it will shake it up a
Thank
lot
you.
because, like we've talked about, you're willing to go places that other candidates won't. So I think that will be something.
I
to
think
see.
I think you'll kind of push the conversation in a direction it wouldn't have gone. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Aren't you just tired of the superficiality?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, what the traditional political establishment does too often, it waters the leaves. We need to water the roots of our democracy. And I feel in this campaign what I felt throughout my career. I'm not saying anything everybody I know isn't saying. I'm just saying it when the microphone is on. They're the ones who are having the weird conversations.
Right.
People are not stupid, and they need to stop talking to us like we are.
All right. Well,
one last question, like an ultimate question for me at least. Why did you decide to run as a Democrat?
I've been a Democrat all my life, but in the congressional race that I ran as an independent. And I ran as an independent because I'm aware of the history of the United States. I'm aware that political parties are not mentioned in the Constitution. I'm aware that abolition came from the Abolitionist Party. Women's suffrage movement came from the Women's Party, and Social Security came from the Socialist Party. I'm aware of how important this third party presence has been, and I've been turned off by the unholy alliance between Democrats and Republicans who leave other people out. However, first of all, even in running for Congress, it was very naive. But more importantly, that was then and this is now. I see the Democrat and Republican parties and all of the issues that we all know like two broken legs and two broken arms. I see this particular presidency more like a bullet near the heart. This is not the time, at least I would never do anything, to risk taking 10 votes away from someone who could possibly defeat this president in 2020. And for that reason, I'm full on, not only if it's me, but any Democrat that is running, I will be there full on with all my passion and my efforts.
Okay. All right. Well, that is our interview with 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you so much.
All right, and much luck to your campaign. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.